Okay, this is going to be a Fieldcraft video. I want you to put your mind in the situation of it's winter. There's snow on the ground. You're out in the field doing operations. It's a lot easier to find you in the winter because you're going to leave tracks. And there's not a hell of a lot you can do about that for the most part. So I thought about this after watching the subarctic bivouacking video from the 1950s. If you haven't watched it, it's over on BitChute and it's over on YouTube. And it also appears over on Utreon. Go and watch it. And something that occurred to me is, how can we better conceal the locations of base camps and patrol bases? Because our tracks are going to give it away. Because normally we come up straight line past the area where we're going to put the base camp. Say we're going to put it up in here. So we would come in, do a 90-degree turn, do it in there, and then during warm weather, not an issue. They could track you and still keep going this way, think you're going this direction. During winter, your tracks are going to give you away. How can you take care of that? Well, our unit's moving forward single file. You're trying to conceal numbers, one in front of the other. Remember, stay close to the edge of the tree lines. Stay in the shadows as much as possible. So our unit comes up. One fire team, let's say, goes past. So they just have a quick little security right here. They're just watching ahead. Bulk of the unit comes in, takes one trail in, filters in, and then they move off to the sides to conceal themselves. So your sleds, your snowmobiles, whatever, will go farther in, and then you're going to have people that are going to filter in a little bit closer, and they're going to set up an ambush over watching the trail here. Now your rear platoon is what I figure would be best for this. When your rear platoon gets up to here, everyone's inside. These guys up in here will start filling in this track here. How are they going to do that? Getting snow from back here, using shovels, sandbags, tarps, ponchos, whatever they got. And they'll start camouflaging this path in here. Use some brush, some evergreen bows and that stuff to kind of sweep it out, to cover up any tracks. Try to blend it in as much as possible. This platoon, probably with this fire team, then continues on a predetermined distance. How far? What do you think would be the best choice for your unit? A kilometer, quarter mile, half mile, a mile? Whatever your SOP will be. Now we got our assembly area set up over here. Our rear platoon, or squad, if you're doing this as patrol base, it'll be the rear squad. They continue on their path. And then once they're that distance out, they start peeling off. They do a massive clover leaf. Send out, say, a couple people at a time, and you start making trails going out. You just start peeling off, peeling off, peeling off. And then each of these legs, they will double back, lay in for security. Probably have a pre-agreed upon point that, say, the first spot where people break off, you're going to meet on, say, that side and this side, and I'll explain, for doing that ambush to see if anyone follows you. So these guys would come up, do their big loop down. These guys come up, do a big loop, Hell, if they cross into the same path, good, they come up, meet up with the other ones, and you just keep doing that until you have just the last team that's in front, and they just break off and do a super wide, coming back till they hit one of the trails, and then they follow it back. Now your little ambush you're going to put in either as a squad or as a platoon. We got the assembly area on this side. We're going to put in kind of a hasty L-shaped ambush. We will push a couple people out as our LPOP, our security, up over here. They're watching. Most of the people are laying here. Everyone who was on this side, the people over on this side, they do a leg going here. Now our enemy force, as they're coming in, we make an assessment. Are they small enough we can wipe them out, or should we let them pass? You know, there's too many of them. Maybe we want them to stay screwed up where they have no idea what happened. You know, they're coming down, and they start hitting all these little trails. They won't know which is the right one. So, doctrinally, they're going to have to track every single one. So these guys on each side, you're going to have some type of rear security set up for in case they do that. Or maybe you'll have it in your plan that once they're past, they're starting to peel off and that stuff. That's when you guys set up just someone watching that direction. You know, watching up this way, down this way, down this way. And then these guys come back onto the trail and you double back to your assembly area. Meet up with the people that are still doing security down here, whatever you come up with for SOP. You come inside and then that new trail gets filled in once again. Now keep in mind, the trail that you're making away has to look the exact same as the trail that led up to that assembly area. You don't want them to figure out that, hey, there's less tracks. So that probably means once you get up to this point here and you're down to like the one squad or the one platoon, they're going to have to drag their feet more, drag an Accio with them to make a super wide track, whatever it is, to make it look like you were still going ahead. And if you are trailing an Accio or two, have them go with this last batch that peels off to come up and around, so that they keep messing up the trails here. So you see these ones coming off and they'll see it and they'll think, oh, it's maybe one person, two person. But that sled, they're still going ahead, so maybe these guys are just an ambush, so that, you know, that unit's still down this way. That's a way to conceal your numbers. Now we're going to talk inside our assembly area, inside our base camp, our patrol base. We're going to want shelters. I mean, this is winter. You're going to have temperatures way below zero at nighttime. You're going to have it at freezing during the daytime for the most part. So you're going to have to adapt. You may have done sleeping on the ground in your sleeping bag during the summer. Well, you might not be able to do that in winter because of freezing temperatures. You're going to want to get something over you, especially if you got a winter storm coming in, like a blizzard. Now here I have lean-to shelter as it's in the military manual and also in the subarctic bivouacking video. Bivouacking just means camping. It's just an older term. So we got two trees or two poles that are parallel to each other, about 5 to 6 feet up off the ground. We tie off a pole going across. We lash it to those trees. We put another pole, which is back here from the side view, this is front view. We put another pole, say 6 to 7 feet back. You're trying to create space underneath here. So you got another log laying there, and then you start putting poles going a long way, linking the two. Those will also be lashed up here for sure, and I'd say at least the ones on the outside down here on the bottom should be lashed to the log on the ground also. Then if you're going to thatch it using pine boughs and that type of stuff, evergreens, you're supposed to put in a couple going across here to help with holding everything in place, and those get lashed in every so often also, just to keep the logs from rolling down. And then you start feeding in the material going from the bottom up. You're just layering it, going all the way so that the snow will build up and then go down off the back. That's how it is in the military manuals for that. And that probably works, say, up in Canada and that stuff, and certain parts of the northern US where you have huge amounts of pine trees and cedars and stuff. Well, other parts, we may have more of deciduous trees. We got the trees that lose their leaves in fall. So maybe we'll only have a few pines, a few evergreens in the area, and we can't exactly strip them to make shelters all over the place. So what can we do on this? And I've been putting some thought into this for a while. We have the same basic setup. Okay, we have our two poles or two trees parallel each other, log on the ground towards the back. We have our long poles coming down. Over the back side of it, we tie on a tarp. So that means that our space here, this is from the top, this is the side, our space here should be the size of 1 to 2 tarps. And then over the top of that tarp, you're going to pile snow. And you're not going to pack it down. You want loose snow. Why is that, security guy? More airspace. The more airspace will assist in the insulation value, and in theory, might actually interfere with someone checking the area with thermals. Now, to assist us in cutting down our thermal signature, on the underside here, remember those Mylar emergency blankets I did a video on? I think it was the Arcturus or something like that. Take one of those, put it on the underside. And then say you tie that off to the logs up in the corners and stuff, and wherever you can, wherever you got a tie down point. And then maybe in a couple spots in there, you'll just run a line from the log down here going up, just to hold that blanket up and off of you. But it should be loose. There should be some type of air that's able to get in between there, which will add to the insulation factor and potentially cut down on thermal signature. You can do that as just an individual, or you can go full on like this. I figured you can probably get away doing something like this for a squad, so that 6 to 10 people inside here. Put 2 of these lean-tos across from each other, constructed essentially the same. Now, you're probably saying, well, what about the ends, security guy? You know, they're going to be able to hit us with thermals there. True. What you can do, take a tarp. So let's imagine this as our tarp here. You got it tied off up here, tied off down here, tied off down here. And then this can be wrapped either over the top of the log or over the top of that Mylar survival blanket. And I'm not talking the little cheap ones that are $1 a piece. I'm talking the ones that cost a bit more. You got a camouflage pattern or at least an earth tone pattern on one side, and it's the Mylar shiny on the other. And they have grommets on the corner and stuff. So this part gets folded, this part is here, becomes our wall on this side. Now if you want to, you could pile snow up over that. You know, put it up, loosen that stuff. Camouflage, and then also cut down on thermal camouflage on someone being able to scan the area. Now I got an empty space here in the middle. Now I got two lines, one tied off here, one tied off here. This one side you'll put in another tarp or a poncho, whatever you decide to go with. This other one over here will be your entrance. I'd suggest using just a poncho on this because they're a lot lighter, easier to move. Make sure it doesn't touch the ground because it could freeze to the ground. So give yourself a little bit of space down at the bottom. Maybe take a few pine boughs and spread it down under the bottom of that poncho down there. And in the very center here, for those really cold days, cold nights, you could do a small fire in there. Now if you do that, you definitely want the top open so that the smoke will rise up and out. The heat will go all directions, especially into your sleep areas. You've got your Mylar thermal blanket in there, survival blanket. That's going to direct those heat rays right back down to the people that are going to be sleeping on sleeping bags down on the ground underneath here. Now it wouldn't hurt that next to your entrance on both sides you could put in some piles of firewood so you already have it ready for if you got to grab it. So, you know, your choice how you would do that. Would you pack it on top of the snow or put that there in front of the tarp and use that as your thermal layer, your camouflage? When you don't have the fire going on the inside, I would recommend take a tarp, tie it off on each corner here, roll it across the top, tie it off down here, which will help keep out snow when it's falling, camouflage you a bit. It wouldn't hurt if you would use, say, another one of those thermal survival blankets. Camo on one side, shiny on the other. Put the shiny side to the inside of the shelter and the camo over the top. Now obviously you're not going to construct something like this out in the open. This is something you're going to want to do in trees. You're going to want to try to spread it around in there to try to conceal it as much as possible. Maybe move it a little bit closer to, say, a side of the hill, you know, closer to those clusters of evergreens, whatever you have in that area. Now the recommendation in the subarctic bivouacking video for when they would put up tents in that video or their lean-tos, have a minimum of 60 meters between your squad-sized shelters. This is to cut down on casualties from indirect fire, like mortars and artillery. Now also inside, which I did not draw here, inside your base camp or your patrol base, you're going to have an area or areas designated as your latrines. Now for that, it's just two trees which are parallel to each other. I'm going to show you the side view. Say knee height or so. On the front of the tree, you're going to lash a log or branch. And then say up about shoulder level on the back side, you're going to lash another branch. We got our snow going across here. Well, right behind where your rear end is going to be, you're going to want to dig down to the ground so that there's a place for your deposits to end up. And you might want to put in there, say, paper, wood ash, something like that to help hold down on the urine when that gets relieved into there. When you would leave, you got to cover that up with some pine boughs and that type of stuff. Throw some snow over the top to try to conceal it as much as possible. Remember, hot food is a necessity in wintertime, so you're going to have to figure out a way to set up a your little defect, your little mess area. And maybe it'll be something like this. You know, they'll have one side where the cooks, the mess team is going to sleep on. The other side is going to be where they have some food. And then maybe they'll have a couple fires on the inside that when they need to heat the food, they can light the fires, put the pots over the top, heat the stuff up. When it's time to feed everybody, maybe they pull out a few boxes or something, set the boxes up out here in front of the entrance. People come filing in. Food gets ladled out into their mess kit, and they continue either back to their shelter area or to an area that's pre-designated where you're going to eat at. Hopefully I'm getting you thinking. Thermal cameras, thermal scopes are getting to be more common. That's going to be a huge issue in wintertime. Things that you can use to get around it will be the Mylar blankets, which work really good. Having an additional tarp over that Mylar blanket will also help block out some of that thermal signature. And then putting loose snow over the top, you get that air space. That will also help you considerably. General size, figure this thing should be 5 to 6 feet in height. The depth from front to back, say 6 feet around, depending on the tarps you have with you. How long? Enough that you can at least get 4 people sleeping on each side. 3 to 4 people. You're always going to want to have people on guard duty. So when the person comes back from guard duty, you know, 1 or 2 people leave, and then that person rolls out their sleeping bag in the spot of the person who left. People are close together. Recommendations on this, a health thing, go head to foot. This is a health thing that the military does. So if we got people sleeping in a row here, head on one side for one person, the next person you alternate going down. You're supposed to have a minimum of 2 feet according to U.S. Army regulations when it comes to sanitation and public health inside a barracks or out in the field. You're supposed to have 2 feet between your head and the person next to you. That's why you alternate. You can pad out the bottom of the area that you're going to sleep on using pine boughs if there's enough of them. Otherwise, the military recommended using inflatable sleeping mats. Barring that, lay down a tarp and then roll out your foam sleeping pads over the top of that. You lose a lot of heat directly into the ground. See, there needs to be a cushion between you and the ground. Pine boughs works the best, say a few inches, between 2 to 4 inches. Be careful, the needles can puncture a Gore-Tex liner on a sleeping bag or any sleeping bag. That's where it comes into maybe wanting to put a foam sleeping mat over the top of the pine boughs and then your sleeping bag on top of that. Where would your rucksacks be? Wherever you have room. Your weapon, I've mentioned this in the past. One thing you can do is have it next to you. The edge of your sleeping bag, wherever the open side is, it's right there. So that you can reach under it quick when you open up the bag, pull your weapon out, pop a magazine in, cycle the bolt, the chamber around, and off you go. There you go. There's some ideas for you on how you can put in a base camp or a patrol base in the winter, in a temperate zone, in a snowy region. Let's hear some other suggestions, ideas people may have. Remember, we're trying to keep this stuff as simple as possible. You know, you don't want people carrying around large amounts of shit. Ounces equal pounds, pounds equal pain. Granted, you can put the stuff on an Accio and haul it behind you, but I would be thinking more of ammunition and food on those Accios than carrying stoves, tents, and that type of stuff. I'm sure some will do it, and I would recommend that, hey, maybe for an aid station for your medics for the unit, maybe get a hold of a tent, put it in there with a stove, and then maybe toss a white camouflage net over the top of it. They do exist. I have a couple of them. But there's no reason every squad should do that. Now, for all my engineer brothers in the Patriot and militia movements, always remember, essayons.